Hello everyone, it's the storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? Unrefined Thirst. Fresh squeezed today, the bartender said, slapping the husky steel barrel behind him. He smiled, his hollow features shadowed by the dim pendant lights over the bar. From his stool, Victor looked down the bar counter. He saw the males with their stark, white shirts and freshly pressed slacks, shiny hair slicked neatly behind their ears. They mingled with flirtatious females, elegant dresses in midnight blues and wine-colored reds. The guests drank from cups. The liquid's rousing scent permeated the tavern. Victor's hands quivered as he watched them drink. Was it 3 days since he'd last had a sip? 4? The thirst boiled inside him, but discipline was paramount. He shook his head at the bartender. Cup of bubble water, raising an eyebrow. The bartender leaned in to meet Victor's gaze. By the looks of you, you need a drink, lad. You're paler than the moon. Victor wasn't sure why he chose to make his abstinence difficult. When curing an addict, they say to make it easy. Remove all temptations. To enter the belly of the beast was self-restraint suicide. Perhaps it was to prove a point. If he could do it here, he could it anywhere. Maybe it was still too early in his sobriety, but he knew the cause was worth it. He had to do this. He had to know it could work. He shook his head again, tapped his fingers on the bar. Please, just bubble water. The bartender's sunken eyes lingered. You ain't one of those puritanicals, are you? Think you're all high and mighty by taking the pledge? Victor tightened his jaw, opened his mouth to comment. But before the words left his lips, he caught himself. Breathe in, breathe out. That's the first lesson when dealing with temptation. Control your breath. He closed his eyes, breathed the metallic scent of the bar, the soft notes of a piano mixed with the steady chatter of the guests. A voice inside screamed for a drink, but he would choose not to listen. He was better than the carnal needs of his biology. He opened his eyes. I'm no puritanical, just someone requesting bubble water. Is that too much to ask? The bartender eyed him suspiciously. He poured a cup of bubble water, placed it in front of Victor. You know they ain't right, those puritanicals. We've been drinking it since the beginning of time. You think by abstaining, you're a better person. Like you're saving lives or something. I told you, Victor said, sipping his bubble water. I'm no puritanical, and that one there ain't a blend salesman. The bartender thumb gestured to a male at the end of the bar, chatting cocksure between 2 females. He wore the usual salesman attire, black suit and tie. Oxfords shined to a sheen. Behind sharp cheeks, he grinned, his milky teeth visible even in the muted light. The females grasped his arms on either side, giggled at his jokes with contrite. The scum of the earth, Victor thought. Big earners with mammoth egos. The blend salesmen were the antithesis of everything Victor stood for. All the work he had done to balance the scales, to build justice in the world. And all they cared about was the paycheck, the females, and satisfying their thirst. Them puritanicals ain't big fans of them blend salesmen, the bartender said. You don't look impressed with that one. Victor grimaced. He couldn't reveal his allegiance here. Who knew who could be listening? But in a moment of irritation, perhaps the abstinence was clouding his judgment. Perhaps he was exhausted from years of bickering with heartless morons. He lashed out. And what if I was one? What if I did take the pledge? The moment the words left his lips, he regretted it. A few bar patrons looked over. The bartender stepped back. As he rag-dried the hollow of a cup, he dissected Victor with his eyes. You would have to leave. Yes, sir. Ain't having none of your kind in here. You come to my bar, you drink the fresh squeeze. Victor looked at the stout steel drum, erected like a monument behind the bar. The keg tap was polished to a sparkle. He felt his innards squirm in discomfort. As loathsome as the contents were, the thirst intensified inside him. He pulled his eyes away. Tell you what, said the bartender. He lifted a cup, opened the keg tap, filled the cup to the brim with liquid. You have a sip of this, and you can stay. I know you ain't really one of them puritanicals. He placed the cup beside Victor's bubble water. Victor looked into the cup. The liquid sat in a delicious, dark pool. Willpower, he thought. You can do this. But the metallic scent flooding his nostrils was overbearing. A deep, primal lust took hold, and the thirst spoke within. Just a sip. All the good you've done, you deserve one sip. Beads of sweat formed on his brow. The bar grew hot and stifling. He peeled his collared shirt from his skin. I won't drink that, he whispered under his breath. The bartender leaned forward, placed both forearms on the bar. You're sweating, lad. It's just a sip. It's in our genes, you know. We can't live without it. He nudged the cup forward so that it was under Victor's nose. The smell overpowered him, entranced him in a mesmerizing grip. The bar chatter dampened to a muffle. The piano's notes hollowed as if underwater. A haze blurred the periphery of his vision. It was just him and the cup, the dark liquid reaching with tempestuous hands. The thirst was shrieking. Drink, drink, drink. Victor's hands shook uncontrollably. Discipline, he thought, his logical mind trying to override his thirst. You cannot control your environment, but you can control your choices. His hands were drawn forward, like a stringed puppet. Inches from the cup, they shook harder, rattling like jackhammers. The thirst howled maddeningly. The compulsion was too great. The thirst too loud. His hands closed around the cup. Lifting it, he brought the screaming contents toward his lips, and then the bar door slammed open. A loud thud shook the room, and the cold night wind poured in. "Found one on the outskirts," a gruff voice said. Victor, along with the rest of the bar's guests, rotated on their stools to the open door. Two figures entered. The first was a husky male, decorated head to toe in furs. Between two beady eyes, his nose protruded from his face like a crow's beak. The second was a human, dark hair matted over her face. Her hands were bound in front of her. She was naked, her body mud-caked. Through the thick grime that covered her face, skittish eyes flitted across the room. Kronos gripped her by the hair, dragged her roughly into the dim bar light. He kicked the back of her leg with a boot, and she fell to her knees. "Still room in the keg, Lonnie?" Kronos said, tugging at the woman's hair. Lonnie, the bartender, spread his arms wide. "Typhus, I see the night's hunt was successful. With guests are thirsty as ours, we will make room. Found her on the outskirts, you said?" "Aye, fiddling with our sunshades. Escaped from the juicing farm, this one. Sure smells like it. Is she marked?" "Left wrist." Traced her to old Galaban's farm. Lonnie laughed. "That old sack can't keep them in. I'm surprised the Regency hasn't shut him down." Typhus furrowed his brow. "Unfortunately so. Will be harder to find strays for the fresh squeeze." His eyes met the great steel barrel behind the bar. "Hard work for Typhus? Come now, have a drink, lad. You're in good company. And you've brought entertainment for the night." Bartender Lonnie gestured to the well-dressed patrons lining the bar counter. "Guests, see what our trapper Typhus has brought us. Lonnie's Tavern hires the best. Drinks and a show tonight." The guests at the bar muttered in agreement. Lonnie handed out fresh drinks from the keg. The pianist increased the tempo of their melody. The chatter in the bar amplified, buzzing voices mingling with clinking cups. Victor watched the salesman at the end of the bar drape his arms around the two females. As he whispered in their ears, they chortled with delight. Typhus dragged the dirt-caked human to a pole in the middle of the tavern. He chained her bound hands to the pole. Victor watched her fearful eyes scan the room. The bloodwood ceiling, the pendant lights, the silver-haired pianist in the corner, the great steel keg shimmering like a shrine. Her eyes flitted from guest to guest, the males in their white button-ups, the females in their ornate dresses. As her eyes met Victor's, he had to look away. Her gaze was horrific. It had a haunted quality, like a creature that had suffered untold misery. To look her in the eye was to give this whole charade permission. Victor noticed he was still clutching the cup of keg liquid between his palms. Looking down into the cup, he met his reflection in the dark pool of liquid. His gut roiled with revulsion. Turning away, he put the cup onto the bar. "It begins," Typhus shouted, sipping a cup, strutting across the bar in his furs. "A live juicing. Here, in none other than Lonnie's Tavern." The guests were all standing now, facing the center of the room, drinking from their cups. The tavern grew quiet. The voices drowned. The pianist stopped playing. "Bring me the fangs," Typhus roared. From behind the bar, Lonnie hefted a large black case and plopped it onto the counter. He snapped the latches open and lifted the fangs from their case. The metal glimmered under the pendant lights. It was a set of steel jaws, edges serrated, with two knife-like incisors projecting from each jaw. Clear tubes led from the jaws to a thigh-sized collection tank. Typhus took the fangs from Lonnie and moved toward the woman. She shifted on the bloodwood floor, tried to stand, but the grime clutching her body caused her to slide onto her backside. She let out an animalistic yelp. As Typhus approached, she moved behind the pole, attempting to hide from the fangs. The spectators laughed. They clinked their cups and drank. Anticipation etched on their faces. Typhus opened the fangs, the incisors sparkling. As he brought them forward, Lonnie cut in. "Hold on, Typhus." Typhus stopped mid-stride. "We've got one of them puritanicals in our midst," Lonnie said. Typhus, along with the rest of the guests, turned to Lonnie. The room was silent. Lonnie pointed a thick finger at Victor. "Right here, this one, drinking the bubble water." All eyes were on Victor. Loathing carved into their faces. Typhus spat on the floor. "A puritanical here?" Victor's pulse began to hammer. Typhus grinned maliciously, lips curling around the end of his crow's beak. "It's a pity, those who choose to abstain. It's a flawed ideology. We were built for blood. It's in our DNA." Victor wanted to say something, wanted to defend himself, defend his cause, but he couldn't find the words. His lips were too dry, his throat too tight. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He closed his mouth. Typhus smiled. "Looks like abstinence has silenced our high and mighty." The room laughed. Victor felt beads of sweat roll down his forehead. They would kill him if they knew the truth, especially in the presence of a trapper. Others could sometimes be reasoned with. They could see the harm they were causing the humans. They would disagree, of course, and would still choose to satisfy their thirst. But they would leave you to your own. You have your point of view. I have mine, they would say. Trappers were not like that at all. Puritanicals must be eliminated at all costs. That was the trapper philosophy. "I'm not a puritanical," Victor lied. "They are a disgrace to our kind." It made him sick saying it, but he knew it needed to be said. A murmur stirred amongst the bar patrons. "Then why haven't you taken a sip of my fresh squeeze?" Lonnie said. His sunken eyes were dark, hollow pits. "Prove it to us." He pushed the keg cup toward Victor. "I have a better idea." It was the salesman's voice this time, smooth and mocking. The two snickering females were still ensnared beneath his languorous arms. He should juice her, make him do it. Victor's stomach dropped. He wanted to vomit, to hurl his insides onto the bloodwood floor. Didn't they understand? It didn't have to be like this. There were other methods, ethical methods. There was the stem cell research the Puritanical Foundation had invested in. It was no longer in its infancy. Soon, human blood could be cultivated in a lab, so juice farms wouldn't need to exist. And there was the alternative blood. Beyond blood. Sure, it didn't taste quite the same, but they were improving the formula every month. He knew the technology would take time, but even if juicing was necessary in the meantime, why did it have to be done this way? Why were there some who would put slaughter on display as a testament to our kind? Why was the world so raw and ruthless? Couldn't we see that humans suffered just as we did? Typhus held out the fangs, fur boots clopping toward Victor. "You heard the lad?" Victor hesitated, felt a fist squeezing at his insides. Typhus was now beside him, placing the fangs in his limp hands. "You're as pale as milk," Typhus whispered in his ear. "I know that thirst within." They were all looking at him. Typhus, Lonnie, the patrons, the human. It was as if he were in a prison. Garlic and silver and sunlight closing in from all sides. He knew if he did not perform the act, if he did not return to his violent roots, what he was made to be, the room would destroy him. They would tear into him with their hungry fangs, ripping flesh from bone like a pack of lions. And they would juice the human anyway. They would take her life just as fast as they took his. Is refusal worth it? How many human lives could he save in the future if he walked out of here alive? How much good could he do if he could continue the puritanical cause? Victor stepped forward. He carried the jaws in one hand, held the collection tank in the other. The human squirmed on the ground, slipping along the floor with her muddy body. Her wide eyes were filled with fear. She tried to pull away, but the chain held her to the pole. Typhus made the job easier. He sliced the woman's thigh with a knife. She screamed, rivulets of blood flowing from the wound. Blood. Fresh cut, human blood. Victor's nostrils flared, and the heavy metallic scent flooded in. It was intoxicating. I'm made for this, he thought. This is how we were built. Blood was his life force, and a vampire needed its feed. He was inches from her now. He placed the collection tank on the floor, and with both hands, opened the fangs. He positioned them over her gashed thigh, prepared to crush down, to bite the metal viciously into her flesh. Victor smiled at her, bared his teeth, fangs glinting in the dim light. His hands were steady, more steady than they've ever been. And then he looked into her eyes, those haunted eyes, those tortured eyes. They screamed at him, shrieked, cursed, howled as loud as eyes could howl, and he felt everything. It's strange, Victor thought, as he crushed the fangs closed, how some do what's right, even when it's the worst possible decision. The chain snapped in two. The vampires came at him, AKA-O. You're awake. Bit sooner than expected, but oh well. Must have got the strength wrong. I'm not exactly experienced with using chloroform. Only tried it twice so far, and once was on myself. Yeah, I know that sounds crazy, but how else was I supposed to see if it worked? Amazed it did, to be honest. Thought it was just a movie thing, but it gave me the best sleep I've had in years. Kenji, too. Doesn't look like it did much for you. You were only out for about 3 hours. Your eyes look like shit. Crusty and bloodshot. Lucky for you, she won't care. It'll probably excite her more. Maybe it's because you're so fit. I mean, this body of yours is impressive. Is this what you call a six-pack? And what's with the arms? How did they get that big? Wasn't expecting it, to be honest. Couldn't tell in the baggy shirt and pants they make you wear. What's a ripped dude like you doing working for a second-rate pizza shop in the middle of nowhere anyway? Shouldn't you be a model or something? Gonna make me look bad, man, when she gets a load of you. I'm going to have to stick to less impressive specimens, like Kenji, the tourist. Skinny arms, you know, bird-like chest. I didn't feel so bad about my weight compared to him. But bodies like yours give me a complex. Oh, don't worry. I know it's a bit off-putting, waking up naked, tied to a chair in the company of a male. It's fine. I'm completely straight. You don't have to worry or be embarrassed. Not that you ever are, I bet. Why would you be? You're a beast. And I don't want this to sound like sour grapes or anything. But why is your thing so huge? I thought that was also a movie thing. Different kind of movie. But damn. So much for all things being created equal. She'll probably get a kick out of that. Meal, not a snack, right? I'd be worried about it if I thought she was the shallow type. But she's not. This is only the second time we've done this. But I know she doesn't care about stuff like that. And even if she did, what could I do? I'm not doing this because I want to. I have to, because I love her. And if I can't give her what she needs, it's my duty to find someone who can. Gotta keep your girl happy, right? And she really enjoyed herself with Kenji, even if he was a bit weedy. Took her time with him too. It was amazing to watch. I mean, it was sickening too, but I couldn't look away. And as long as she was getting what she needed, I was happy. You should have seen her when she was done. She was glowing and grateful. I'm the one she spent the night with after. It was so good. Being in bed with her, feeling her body next to mine, caressing her hair, having sex, made the sacrifice worthwhile. Made me want to do it again. And that's where you come in. Delivering a pizza to a paddy field farm at the top of Akiota Valley isn't the only useful task you're going to perform today. And what are you looking at? Oh, sorry. Should have put that out of sight. Yeah, it's a ball gag. But don't worry. Like I said, I'm straight. I haven't kidnapped you for some weird sex game. The gag is for her. My girl. Yeah, I know. That sounds kinky. And I suppose it is. But not in the way you think. It's just, there are things I can't give her, or things I can't get from her. So after she's indulged, after she's finished, unfortunately she has to wear that gag to be with me. But never mind all that. That's personal. I need to get on with the messy part of the proceedings. I want to make sure she enjoys her time with you. So it needs to be just the way she likes it. So you're going to have to forgive me for what comes next. Shit, look at the time. She'll be up soon, and she's going to be starving. She's a different person when she's hungry. You'll see when you meet her. Not going to lie, it's not a pretty sight. Takes some getting used to. But once she's eaten, well, it's a different story. She's an absolute angel then. Divine. Hey, why are you starting to struggle? Oh, I get it. You're getting the picture. Yeah. Kenji figured it out too. He completely lost it, though. You're much more composed. Testing the ropes, shifting around. Chair is bolted to the floor, in case you can't tell. You can't get out. Now stop. No point trying to shout. Sounds ridiculous through the gag, and nobody's going to hear you. This is my grandmother's house, and it really is in the middle of nowhere. You must have noticed that on your way here, wondering how the fuck you were going to get away with delivering a cold pizza. Town is pretty deserted, right? Total dump. Never thought I'd end up stuck on a farm in the backwoods of Hiroshima. But that's my mother for you. Excels at ruining my life. Though, having said that, if she hadn't made me come here to look after Oba-chan, I never would have found my true love. No, there's no point staring at the ceiling either. dear old Oba-chan isn't going to stick her head through and ask if you'd like a cup of sake. No. For one thing, the stroke robbed her of the ability to get around on her own, and for another, she'd be more likely to snap at you for making noise. Then roll out a list of damn chores. Tidy the kitchen, cut some wood, build a fire, feed the chickens, muck out the pigs, clean the bathroom. Or she'd tell you she needed the bedpan again. Or worse, a cleanup of the passage between her legs. So disgusting. Can't believe I put up with that for 2 months. You're honestly lucky you don't have to listen to it, man. Or smell it. We're both lucky she's not here anymore. So don't waste your time making a fuss. Until Aka gets here, we're alone. Now, I gotta head outside for a bit. Don't hurt yourself trying to escape. Those knots are good. Trust me. I was a scout for years. Not to mention a band geek and shogi player. My mother stuck me in as many after-school clubs as she could, so she didn't have to spend any time with me. You know how it is, right? Have a kid to get away, then the kid gets in the way. Anyway, back in a minute. Sorry about that. Didn't realize how heavy this would be. Filled it up too much, I think. Oh, relax. Your eyeballs look like they're going to pop out of your head. I know how it looks, but this is not for you. Trust me, you're not going to be left to decompose in a rusty metal barrel in a rice field. It's like the sex thing. You've got me all wrong. I'm not a murderous pervert. I'm 17, for fuck's sake. I listen to baby metal and play Fortnite. I'm a nerd, a fat geek with no friends. Well, I used to be. Until I met Aka. Now I have more than a friend. Someone I care about, who appreciates me for who I am, not how I look. I'm sure you don't understand how rare that is. How could you? Mr. Adonis. Okay. Look, I apologize in advance for how this is going to smell, and... oh yeah, there we go. Whoa, that's worse than I expected. Maybe I should have left the lid off. Fuck. Thought I was going to throw up for a second there. Okay, gloves on for this. You okay? Look a little green. Probably for the best you have that gag on. Or maybe that's making it worse. I don't know. I'll be quick anyway. It's just a big vat of pig shit, chicken shit, and basic sludge from the rice fields. Filth, right? I'm sorry, but when we talk about kinks, I guess this is the biggie. For Aka, I mean, not me. Hell no, I'm not into this shit. Pardon the pun. Really does it for her, though. She loves it. She needs it. And like I said, I can't give it to her. Not like this. Not with added sweat and bodily excretions. And, yeah, sorry about that also. But you're going to be excreting a lot. Don't worry. I've seen it all before. It's fine. AKA, we'll clean it up. And honestly, once she's on top of you, you're not going to care what comes out. This is really disgusting. I apologize. I'm just going to keep dumping it on, not going to rub it in anywhere. Didn't have to do this with Oba-chan or Kenji. Oba-chan supplied her own filth. The filth I left her lying in for days. Just couldn't bring myself to clean her anymore. And I was busy getting to know Aka, so, you know. And Kenji got filthy in the fields. Spotted him out there taking photos of our resident ibis. Hadn't really started looking for anyone at that stage. But when I saw him there, all on his own, I just decided to give it a go. Soaked a rag in chloroform and went out to be friendly. Not sure what tipped him off. Something was up, but he saw it coming before it hit his face, and he made a run for it. Didn't get far. Fields are too marshy to run in. Went down hard and got covered in muck. So that was enough. No additional basting needed. Ha. Sorry. I know it's not funny. I know this smells and feels awful. But I think I'm done. Now I just need to run a trail of it from you to the bathroom. It's almost 9. She'll be waking up in there now, making her way out of the tub. I feel like I should explain. I didn't with Kenji, and he almost ripped his arms to get free when Aka came out. I had to hold him still until she got going. Would rather not have to do that with you. So maybe if I prepare you, that will help. Was fine with Oba-chan. Apart from her lack of mobility, she knew all about Aka. It wasn't a surprise to her at all. Of course she knew her. She's the one who kept her locked in the bathroom all these years. She deserved what she got. My mother deserves it too. She knew. She helped. And then lying to me about what I saw that first time I met her. Telling me it was my imagination, and I didn't really see an emaciated, corpse-like girl thrashing around on the wet room floor, licking up grime. I was only 7, but I could have helped. I could have done something, maybe gotten her out. But my mother didn't bring me back after that. Didn't want to ever come back at all. But then Oba-chan had her stroke, and she had no choice. Well, she did. She had me. Fuck my mother, man, you know. Dropping me off to look after the old bitch, ruining my summer. She said I had to do it because she couldn't get out of her work trip to France. Potential new client, big project, huge for the company, the usual bullshit. I thought it was because she didn't want to have to take care of the old bat, because she hated her or was afraid of her. I never knew which. Now I know it had more to do with Aka. She didn't want to deal with her either. which makes her more of a selfish bitch than I ever thought. I don't even know if she's coming back. Haven't heard from her since she left. Barely hung around more than an hour, just long enough to make sure I knew where everything was, and to remind me how to clean the fucking bathroom. I really didn't get it. What the big deal was with that. Constantly hosing it down and scrubbing the walls. But I remembered it was the same when I was a kid. Remembered that summer when I was home alone and I went to play in the fields, got covered in mud, and traipsed it back, made a complete mess, left the bathroom covered in dirt, left it in a state that lured her out. I didn't see her getting out on that occasion, just heard a noise in the bathroom later when I went to the toilet, opened the connecting door to check it out, and there she was, flailing around on the floor, licking up the dirt I'd left behind. I can't tell you if I was scared or not, because I don't remember. I don't think I was. And she didn't hurt me. She just kept licking. And I kept watching, rooted to the spot in the open door, until Oba-chan and my mother came home. My mother dragged me away. Oba-chan grabbed a mop and charged into the wet room. I don't know what happened that night. I let my mother convince me I had a fever and was hallucinating. Let her convince me I never saw Akka. But I did. And I hate that I let myself be tricked. If somebody had taken care of her, maybe she wouldn't have ended up so full of hate, in such bad condition. How could you blame her, trapped beneath a bathtub for decades, or longer? Who knows how long she's been there? Ever since Oba-chan inherited this place anyway, in the 60s, long after the war. And yes, the land was still radioactive, but the bomb didn't make Akka. She existed before that, long before. She doesn't talk, and she can't tell me exactly, but I know from my research she's immortal. All yayokai are. They just get forgotten, shut away, alone, lost in limbo, until something explosive rips the veil between worlds and sets them free, free to be kept prisoner somewhere else. But I'm changing that. Ever since I found out she was real, when I stopped cleaning the stupid bathroom for hours every day, like that bitch demanded, scrub the bathtub, hose the walls, mop the floor. That's how they kept her imprisoned. And a couple of days after I stopped doing it, she got out. It was like all those years ago. Went for a piss one night. Heard something moving in there. This time, it didn't surprise me at all. It just made me sad. AKA loves filth. It's what she thrives on. Cleanliness is kryptonite to her. Hygienic conditions, sanitized surfaces. She can't breathe in an environment like that. It isn't fair. You know what else isn't fair? Her full name, Akaname. they call her. Filth liquor. Can you believe it? The indignity. Naming her that just because of her nature? It's like people calling me hideous when my name's Hideo. I don't know why Obachan decided to keep her a prisoner. If she'd just taken time to get to know how she works. So what if she bubbles up like sludge from the plug hole? So what if she needs to digest dirt to take form? So what if her saliva is acidic? Let her lick all the dirt she wants, then hose the residue down. It makes her better. Her body. The more filth she consumes, the better it gets. Fully formed. Beautiful. I've seen it now, twice. After she licked Obachan clean, and Kenji licked away their dirt, their skin, their organs, licked everything up, then swallowed their gore-covered bones. It's amazing what she can do. Doesn't leave a trace. For someone who loves filth, she knows how to leave things spotless. And as long as you stay away from her mouth, you can do anything you want with her, all night, until the straw comes up and she melts and goes back down the pipe. Can you hear her in there? Sounds like something wet and sloppy thrashing around. But it's like I said, she's a bit of a mess at the start. A pile of mush, you could say. But just wait. Wait till she licks all this shit off the floor. You'll see her body grow, and by the time she gets to you, she'll look half human. Those eyes, that hair, those breasts, that long, sinuous, acid-dripping tongue. It'll hurt at first, I won't lie. And seeing your foot dissolve in her mouth will drive you crazy. But the pain won't last. I saw it with Obachan and Kenji. By the time she'd devoured one leg and looked like a fully formed girl, they didn't even feel it anymore. Her beauty takes away the pain, and she is beautiful for a time after she's eaten. The most beautiful girl in the world. But you'll have to take my word for that. You'll never see it. She'll make you feel like the most important person in existence, but you're not. I'm the one who feeds her. I'm the one who loves her. I'm the one who holds her through the night, after she's feasted on filth like you and Obachan and Kenji and my mother. If she ever comes back, she'll get hers for leaving my Aka to suffer. Aka's my girl, and she's never going to be alone again. Now, I think she can come out. Are you ready to meet her? Here we go, then. Oh yes, there she is. There's my girl. Can you see? Even like this. Isn't she lovely? Hello, my beautiful Aka. Dinner is served. 28 Sleighs Later. Above the laughter and Christmas music, the bang against the door came. Thump, thump, thumped Paul Reyes' side. He patted his wife's hand and pushed his chair away from the table. "Don't worry, love. I've got this one." Rosemary frowned at him. "But everybody's here. Who could it be?" He stopped. Rose had framed the doorbell with tinsel. You couldn't miss it. It would take a brain-dead person to knock instead of ringing. He shrugged. "Carolers, or something. I'll give 'em a quid and tell 'em to bugger off." A round of laughter rippled around the table. The playlist swapped over to Wham's Last Christmas. Outside in the front hall, the door shuddered again. Thump, thump, thump. It banged hard enough to make the door vibrate in its frame. Annoyance flickered in his mind. The nerve of some of these charity-begging types. He wasn't one to sniff at donations, but give a man ample time to get up. And don't knock his door down like you're the wolf versus the 3 little pigs. He hurried along in his slippers. I'm coming! Hold your horses!" But still, the banging continued. Thump, thump, thump. The little panes of glass at the top of the door vibrated and threatened to shatter. The figure of a man swayed beyond, blurry and dark. Paul gritted his teeth. He'd have some stern words for whoever it was. It didn't matter what good cause they were raising money for. This behavior was downright rude. He slid the chain off and yanked the door open. "Oh, for goodness sake, what's your prob?" The man behind the door barged through, snarling and screeching. He wore a parka coat with its fur-ringed hood raised. It framed his mess of a face. He had blood smeared all across his skin, and his nose was missing. A window shattered somewhere in the back of the house, and a woman shrieked. Paul's stomach dropped, and he screamed. He grappled with the invader and grabbed a hold of his shoulders. "What?" he grunted. "Let go of me." The man clawed at Paul's shirt. He leaned forward and snapped his teeth. His breath was rotten, and he had bits of ragged meat caught between his teeth. He snarled like a wildcat, and his eyes were white, except for tiny pinpricks of blackness in the center. He flinched backwards from the bites. It was almost as if the maniac wanted to bite his nose off, too, as revenge for losing his own. Whatever was wrong with him, drugs, he guessed. He was dangerous, and Paul had to stop him. Paul grabbed the nearest thing from the shelf on the wall, an animatronic snowman. He smacked the madman across the face with it. Jingle Bell Rock played from the crappy speakers, and the snowman started to boogie. Paul hit the man with it again and again. "Get out! Get out!" The man recoiled from each blow of the rubber decoration. He snarled and shrieked, backing away through the front door as Paul struck him. At some point, something mechanical cracked inside the snowman. The song came out slurred and slow. Jack Frost danced slower. One arm snapped off, and his head dented inwards. Blood smeared across his white body. Adrenaline surged through Paul's veins, reminding him of how it felt to be a young man. He became aware of his battle cry as he fought the mauled lunatic out of his home. With the noseless man wobbling on the threshold, Paul landed a kick into the guy's gut. "And stay out!" he roared. The man went sprawling backwards over the Reyes' front steps. He clattered into a heap at the foot of their driveway. At the top of the driveway staggered a group of people. 2 men and 4 women. Each had various ghastly wounds, like the noseless assailant. A cheek torn open here, an eye gouged out there. Intestines spilt out of one woman's belly and trailed behind her like a bridal train. Across his small patch of lawn in front of the lounge windows, a woman with one arm shambled towards him. Paul's nerves turned to liquid and his legs to jelly. He whimpered and felt his bladder threaten to release. He scrambled for the door, missed, found the handle, and slammed it shut. With shaking hands, he slid the chain back across, his fingers slaked with gore. "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus," he whispered to himself. Immediately, the door began to bang again, and so did the windows looking into the lounge. And the screams from the back of the house continued, high-pitched and terrified. Goose flesh rippled up all over Paul's body. These nutcases had surrounded the house. He had no idea what they wanted, but he guessed it wasn't a cup of cocoa. He pushed off from the vibrating door and strode towards the sound of the commotion. He brandished his decoration/weapon. Rose, in the kitchen, some of the attackers had smashed their way through the windows. The glass sliced their forearms to ribbons, but they didn't care. They were trying to pull Rose out by her hair. She shrieked and kicked and batted at the hands to no avail. Several of their guests stood by and watched, their faces drawn in a rictus of shock. They still held their alcoholic beverages. Sean from next door had gone white, and his beer was tipping and spilling on the kitchen tiles. Paul froze. Rose had always argued about getting double glazing, but he'd deferred. He now wished he'd listened to his wife. How long until the front windows, looking out onto the lawn, shattered under the strain? He slapped himself across the face and raced into the fray, swinging Frosty for all his worth. He smacked at the hands that snaked through the glass over and over and over again. "Get off my wife, you damn hooligans!" That broke the paralysis spell over the others. The kitchen became a flurry of activity as people dropped drinks and grabbed a hold of Rose. Gail Clark yanked on Rose's feet, pulling her back into the house. In his vest and tie combo, Sean lobbed his pint glass through the window with a violent yell. The claws clutching Rose weakened enough for her to break away. Rosemary collapsed to the floor, sobbing. She held her hands to the blotchy red patches of yanked-out hair. Paul's mind was a flurrying snowstorm of thought. He stood in the kitchen, chest heaving. He stared out at the people gathered in his back garden. "Zombies," he said, not quite believing himself. "They're goddamn zombies." The swaying figures closed in on the house. Bangs and clangs echoed from the front. The dim winter light faded as the bodies blocked out the windows. They moaned in a chorus of the dead, their bloodied hands slapping against the four walls. Someone asked, "What do we do, Paul?" I don't," a woman screeched. "They're coming down the fireplace." An ice shard speared through Paul's core, and the world seemed to slow. "Sweet baby Jesus," he mumbled. An enormous thud shook the foundations of the house. The survivors staggered to the walls for support. Paul shook his head clear. He tightened his grip on Frosty and ran for the lounge. He skidded to a halt as a cloud of coal dust settled across the room, coating the furniture and the tree. The hell? The smog cleared to reveal a massive man in a red and white suit. He kneeled, fists on either side, like the Terminator from that Schwarzenegger flick. A large brown sack slung over his shoulder. He had heavy-duty black boots, and a Santa hat clung to his head. Paul's insides shriveled. He'd fought off the one at the door because they'd been roughly the same size. But this one? No chance. He tried to speak, but found that all the spit had evaporated from his mouth. Only a tiny mouse-like squeak came from his vocal cords. The giant looked up. His eyes sparkled above two rosy cheeks. The orbs looked normal. No cataractic whiteness, narrowing to a black pinprick. A big, thick, white, bushy beard sprouted from his face. Paul dropped the damaged Frosty, which bounced to the laminate wooden floor. His head spun like he'd taken a right hook to the dome. "Santa?" Paul whimpered. Santa smiled, but the smile was fleeting. "Yes, Paul, it is me. Do not be afraid." He glanced at the window, which showed the growing horde pressing against it. "But you should be afraid of those naughty boys and girls." Paul's heart hammered high up in his chest, like a hummingbird trapped in his torso. His brain kept rifling through facts and thoughts as if to make sense of it all. His old thinker kept coming up short. It threw its cards in the air and searched through the rubble again. "What?" He licked his lips. "What do we do?" Santa grinned and stood up. He was 8 feet tall and towered over Paul and the others. If he were any taller, he wouldn't be able to stand upright in this house. He chuckled a deep, throaty laugh. Ho, ho, ho. It rumbled through the earth like a bear's growl. Santa unslung his sack and upended it onto the living room floor. Machetes, blades, baseball bats, cricket bats, axes and chainsaws, swords and knives, flamethrowers and guns, even a grenade, and armor. It looked like police riot gear, except it had the symbol of a snowflake. I have brought you well-behaved children, some toys to play with. Paul regained some of his lost nerve at the sight of the armory. With this elf-like giant on their side, they could turn the tides of battle. He bent down and picked up a chainsaw. Groovy, Santa bowed. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a few 100,000 more homes to equip for the coming siege. Out beyond the front window, a reindeer with a red nose was fighting off zombies with its antlers. It was winning. Paul felt like someone had punched the wind out of him. His eyes darted from Santa to the fireplace. You mean you won't stay? Won't stay and fight? We won't last without you. I am afraid there are others who need me. Santa raised one gloved finger. Remember, Paul, jealousy and greed are very naughty. He gestured to the treasure hoard on the ground. I brought you these because you have all been good. Let us keep it that way. Will you at least tell us why this is happening? Santa narrowed his eyes. When there is no more room in ho-ho hell, the dead will walk the earth. And with that, he vanished back up the chimney in the blink of an eye. In the background, the glass front window started to crack. A lightning bolt fault line zigzagged. Paul revved the chainsaw and beckoned his friends and family. Let's do this. Everyone, arm yourselves. Rose, stay behind me. Put some armor on. Gail picked up a spear and donned a helmet. She pulled up alongside Paul and jabbed at the air between them and the fracturing window. A flurry of movement in the distance showed that Rudolph was still fending off the zombies. Gail screeched. Jesus is the only zombie we allow this time of year. Paul took the lead and strode forward, chainsaw in front like a jouster. Sean drew alongside with a shotgun. He pumped it, and 2 red shells bounced to the Reyes' rug. Sean had a steely look in his eyes that Paul had never seen before. He didn't even know the man could handle a gun. The only thing we should be eaten is turkey. The window gave way, and the zombies flooded in. Paul raised the growling chainsaw and went to battle. Rest in peace on earth. The Christmas Queen. A frozen blanket of ice glazed the roads on Fern Street as the Wallace family headed home from a busy day of shopping. The houses were adorned with multicolored lights, and blow-up decorations were as far as the eye could see. Every door had a festive wreath to showcase the spirit of the season, and carolers sang songs of merry for all to hear. Yes, my friends, it was Christmas Eve once again, a time when boys and girls dream of toys and candy, and parents wish for peace on earth. Even grandparents put their worries away and enjoy watching their loved ones celebrate the traditions they have passed down through the years. There was no doubt about it. The holidays have always brought joy to the entire world. As John Wallace pulled into the driveway, he noticed his neighbor, Ben Foster, hanging his Christmas lights. He parked his blue, reindeer-decorated Subaru, looked at his wife, Martha, and said, "It's a little late to be hanging lights, isn't it?" Martha took a sip of her hot chocolate and rasped, "Oh, give him a break. Ben's getting older, and ever since his wife, Alice, passed away a few years ago, he hasn't been the same." John lifted his brow and shrugged. "Yeah, but all things considered, don't you think it's a little counterproductive?" He looked at Ben and continued, "I mean, after Christmas, all this stuff has to come down, so what's the point?" "He likes to be included," Martha said. "Alice used to decorate that house every year, so I suppose he wants to honor her memory." "Humph," John huffed. He looked in the back seat to see his 12-year-old daughter, Sarah, glued to her phone. "Hey, kiddo, we're home. You want to go over and help Ben put up his lights?" Sarah removed her earbuds and snapped, "What? Do you wanna—" "I heard what you said, Dad." Sarah's words cut deeply. "Why should I do that?" Martha put her hot beverage in the cup holder and spoke firmly. "Sarah, we don't need that attitude right now. It's Christmas, so why don't you lend some good cheer and help our neighbor? We have to put these groceries away anyway. You can watch your TikTok videos later." Sarah ruffled her face, pinched her lips together, and fired, "Fine." John widened his eyes as Sarah exploded from the car. "Be good," he said. "It's the holidays." The cool air was comforting because Sarah's insides were boiling. She unzipped her pink jacket and removed her black toboggan snow hat. She reached up, parted her brown hair behind her ears, and marched across the snow. Her unicorn boots sparkled in the moonlight, which matched her black leggings. Martha and John gathered their bounty and smiled as their little girl approached Ben. They were glad to see Sarah heed their words, because they had some presents to hide, and the distraction was a welcomed surprise. "I'm glad to see her do something besides messing with her phone," John said. "She's been so distant lately." "Yeah," replied Martha. "Teens will be teens." She gave Sarah a quick wave and entered the house. "Hi, Mr. Foster," Sarah greeted with a quick flutter. Ben was straggling the ladder near his front porch and snapped in another staple to a strand of lights. He nearly fell off when he heard Sarah's voice. When he regained his footing, he looked down and uttered, "Oh, you startled me, little one." Sarah looked up and said, "Do you need help?" My parents sent me over. He cleared his throat, pointed to a box on his porch, and muttered, "Well, darlin', you could hand me those other lights in that box. It sure would help these old legs of mine." "All right," moaned Sarah. She grabbed the lights and noticed a red machine about the size of a lawnmower resting by the sidewalk. She glared at the contraption for a few moments before Ben's voice brought her back to reality. "Don't mind that, sweetie," he said. "That's just the snowblower." He lowered his hand and grinned. "How about those lights?" Sarah ran over to the ladder and reached as high as she could until Ben grasped the lights. She watched as he stapled one strand at a time with his shaky hands. "This is going to take all night." The access line with the plug dangled beside Sarah like a slithering snake, and she pulled out her phone and began recording. "What are you doing?" Ben asked. Sarah sighed. "I'm recording this moment so I can upload it to my TikTok channel later." She lowered her voice and mumbled, "My friends will be so excited to see how boring my life is." "What's Tiki Talk?" Sarah wrinkled her eyebrows. "Really? Don't worry about it. It's just a social media thing." "Ha! Don't worry," said Ben. "I know all about social media. I watch the news all the time." He continued stapling the lights and began humming Jingle Bells. The access wire kept creeping along and got tangled around Sarah's boots. She stumbled a bit, but didn't fall. Once again, her attention turned to the snowblower. She grabbed the cord and placed the end of it in the machine's blades. "This will show him not to trip me again. This thing should strip all those lights, and then I can go home." She saw a lever on the control panel that said "on" and pulled it. With a soft hum, the blades engaged, and the loose wire was pulled into the machine. Sarah stepped back and positioned her phone to capture all the chaos. Ben whipped his head like a startled rodent and yelled, "Turn that off!" His words were cut short as the looped wire around his neck became taut and flung him off the ladder. His body hung in the air while the snowblower pulled against the stapled lights. He tried to break free, but his old hands didn't have the strength. He gasped for air, but none would fill his lungs. Within seconds, all the life in Ben's writhing body ceased, and his eyes grew cold. "Oh, shit," Sarah gasped, turning off the snowblower. "That was awesome." Later that night, Sarah awoke to flashing red and blue lights shining on her ceiling. And they were not Christmas lights. The police were on the scene, and Sarah watched through her bedroom window as the paramedics took Ben away in a black body bag. Sarah, 1,000 snakes slithered down Sarah's spine when she heard her mother's cry. She ran down the stairs as fast as her little legs would carry her and found her mom and dad sitting at the kitchen table. "Honey," John said with a long, drawn-out tone. "You were with Ben this evening. Did you notice anything strange?" Sarah clasped her hands behind her back and mumbled, "No. Are you sure, sweetheart?" Martha asked with tear-filled eyes. "Well," Sarah started, and then paused to scrunch her lips. "I may have done something naughty." She walked closer to the table and leaned against the marbled countertop. John stood up, placed his hand on Sarah's shoulder, and asked, "What did you do?" Sarah fumbled for the right words, but couldn't find them, so she turned her back. "It's all right," John said, looking at Martha. "If you had something to do with what happened tonight, we have to tell the police." "He's right, dear," Martha said. Sarah wrinkled her forehead, clenched her jaw, grabbed a sharp blade from the knife block that was right in front of her, turned, and slashed her father's throat. A thick stream of blood painted Sarah's pink unicorn pajamas, and her mother screamed. John grabbed his severed neck, fell to the floor, and choked on his own blood. "No!" Martha screamed. "What did you do?" Martha ran to John and held him in her arms as he breathed his last breath. When she looked at Sarah through bloodshot eyes, the last thing she saw was the glimmering blade as it penetrated her skull. The blade bit strong and true, and as it pierced Martha's brain, visions of her life flashed by like lightning strikes. And then darkness took her. Sarah gripped the knife and yanked it out of her mother's head. A weary smile crept upon her face as she turned to her phone that she had placed on the countertop earlier. TikTok is gonna love this. Suddenly, Sarah heard footsteps coming from the living room. She grew silent and heard the faint sound of bells jingling in the distance. Out of curiosity, Sarah tiptoed out of the kitchen and peeked around the wall to see a white-bearded man wearing a red suit with black boots putting presents underneath the tree. "Santa?" gasped Sarah. The jolly man turned and bellowed, "Ho, ho, ho!" Sarah ran towards him with the knife held high, and his tone quickly changed. "Ho, ho, ho, oh, no." He grabbed her arm and took the knife away. "Put that away. It's Christmas." "No, you big fat bully," Sarah yelled. "Let me go." Santa looked at Sarah's blood-soaked pajamas and said, "Something tells me you've been a naughty girl this year. I knew I should have checked that list twice. I guess I'm getting a little lazy. I should have listened to Mrs. Claus. She's always right. What did you do, little girl?" "I'm not telling you," Sarah snapped. He held Sarah's arm and walked into the kitchen, where he discovered the cold bodies of her parents. "Oh, no. You have been a bad girl. What should I do with you?" Well, this is Christmas, and I think you should come with me until I fly to the police station. You must answer for this crime." "No!" Sarah yelled. "You can't make me do anything." "Ho, ho, 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 I'm Santa Claus, and I will do what's best for you. He grabbed Sarah's arm a little tighter, placed a finger on his nose, and they disappeared up the chimney in a puff of magic smoke. They appeared in Santa's sleigh on the roof, and with a quick dash, they were off flying with his 9 reindeer: Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen, and Rudolph. Sarah pulled out her phone and pressed the record button. No one is going to believe this. They flew around for a few minutes before landing on the next roof, and Santa quickly delivered his gifts. When he emerged from the chimney, Sarah folded her arms and scoffed. I thought you were taking me to jail. Ho, 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 huffed Santa. I plan on doing just that after I make a few more deliveries. He laughed, and Sarah couldn't believe that his belly did indeed shake like a bowl full of jelly. It is Christmas, after all, and time is of the essence. He grabbed the reins and said, Now, hold tight. Here we go. Ho, like a twinkle from a Christmas light. They were off again, soaring through the clouds. Sarah expected to feel the freezing temperatures, but was toasty warm in the sleigh. Santa's red gift bag was neatly tucked in the back seat, and Sarah decided to have a peek. She gave Santa a double take to make sure he wasn't watching her, and untied the thick golden rope around his bag. She raised her eyebrows when a blinding light began to show itself through the opening. The warmth and power caressed her soul. It was a strange feeling. What is this? Ho, ho, ho. It's the Christmas spirit of love, Santa said with a warm smile. It's something that you have closed your heart to. He turned and watched Sarah close the sack. Her droopy eyes and frown showed the beginnings of sorrow. I think people sometimes forget that I know all and see all. It's so annoying. Ho, ho. Santa reached up and patted his white, fluffy beard and continued. What you need to understand is that while this world is filled with hate, there is also hope. Hope to overcome hardship and faith to do good. I believe you have that warmth in your heart, and all you need to do is admit your wrongdoings and let the healing begin. Everyone can change. No words came from Sarah. She sat stone-faced and seemed lost in deep thought. Santa nodded and steered his beloved reindeer to the next house. Not to worry, Sarah. Forgiveness will always be there for you when you want to accept it. As Santa landed on the snow-covered roof, he stood next to the chimney with his red sack of presents and gave Sarah another cheerful look. I won't be long. Our next stop will be the police station. And then your healing can begin. Ho, ho. Sit tight. I'll be right back. He touched his nose transformed into a dazzling, colorful mist and swooped down the chimney. He filled the stockings hanging by the fireplace with candy and doodads and placed a handful of presents under the sparkling tree. A plateful of peanut butter cookies caught his eye before leaving. "Oh, my favorite," he beamed. "How can I say no? Ho, ho." Santa ate every last crumb and drank the full glass of milk that was left for him. Most people believed that he preferred chocolate chip cookies, but the savory taste of peanut butter was his weakness. Time was getting on, and Santa snorted his way back up the chimney. When he emerged from the smoky funnel, he fell to his knees, and his rosy face turned red. The snow-covered roof was painted blood red, and the reindeer were gathered in a circle, snooting and grunting. As the reindeer parted, Santa saw Sarah sitting on Rudolph's mutilated carcass, eating his red nose. A slight trickle of bright red ichor flowed down her chin. "It does taste like a cherry." Santa rose with a clatter and yanked Sarah off of Rudolph. "What have you done?" His face shook like a bowl full of molded pudding. "I thought you could change. I believed you had some good in your heart." "Ack!" His words were cut short when Sarah quickly slashed his throat with the knife she found in the front seat of the sleigh. Santa should have left it at Sarah's house when he took it from her. But mistakes are habitual. Santa's white, fluffy beard soaked up the blood like a thick towel and turned crimson. His jolly-filled eyes twinkled and rolled back into his head, where visions of Christmas pasts grew dark. His jingle bell knees quivered and gave out, and he collapsed in front of Sarah like a deflated blow-up decoration. Sarah's eyes danced in the bloodshed twilight, and she laughed with a bubbly voice. "Ha, ha, ha, ho. Merry Christmas, you fat bastard. You thought you knew what I needed? Well, screw you." She grabbed her recording phone that was positioned on the sleigh, held it up, and said, "To all my TikTok followers and the non-believers, the spirit of Christmas can be killed. That's how you do it, my friends." Sarah stopped recording and noticed the goosebumps forming on her slender arms. Jack Frost was wickedly biting into her bones as the warmth of the Christmas magic faded. Her pink, blood-covered unicorn pajamas were no match for the freezing temperatures, so she ran over to Santa's rotting corpse, removed his heavy red coat, and put it on. The coat was too big for her small frame, but in an instant, Sarah's insides stopped quivering, and a circle of warm, magic dust swirled around her. All at once, the jacket adjusted itself to fit her body perfectly, and Sarah felt a power that only dreams could bring. She heard children's voices and saw their dreams as they slept. Sarah automatically knew who was good and who was bad. there was an overwhelming sense of joy, and she swatted it down with a gust of hatred. Well, who would have thought? Sarah watched as the reindeer instantly took their place by the sleigh, and Prancer gave her a look that would kill most people. "What?" she asked, shrugging her shoulders. "I've always been the love of my own life, and it's only fitting that I become the Queen of Christmas." Sarah knew exactly what to do. Christmas must go on. There was no question about that. But what form would it take? She pulled out her phone again, hit the live stream button on TikTok, and laughed as the number of viewers crossed the billions. With the device held high to capture the perfect angle, Sarah smiled a devilish grin and rejoiced. It's time to spread some Christmas fear. Elf off the shelf. From the beginning, there had only ever been one rule. Don't let anyone see you move. But after what I saw tonight, I was afraid I was going to have to break that rule. The Duncans' house was full of people. From inside Mrs. Mitchell's purse, I carefully peeked out through the open zipper and saw dozens of recognizable faces. People who had come over to pick up Oliver and Squires' friends over the years. They were all laughing and eating and drinking merrily, despite Christmas having already passed. This I knew, because Mrs. Mitchell had already put me away for the season, which made it even more exciting when she had come back to retrieve me again so soon. Everyone was dressed festively in gold, green, and red. The Christmas tree was still brightly shining, and stockings still hung on the mantel above a lit fireplace. Jingle tunes buzzed across the room, and the smell of spiced cider simmered about. As I scanned the festive room, delighting in all its magic, I spotted a familiar face. But it was not just any face. No, this face looked quite like mine. So much like mine. In fact, I was certain it was mine. But was it possible? Another one of us had been granted access to such an exclusive event after Christmas? What were the odds? It took all my training and discipline, much like the effort I'd put forth when Mr. Mitchell accidentally dropped me in the toilet a few years back, not to call out and wave to my North Pole brother. Our mission had always been deemed a solo one. We'd known from the start that once we were sent off, it would be unlikely for us to see another of our kind again. Instead of calling out, I admired my fellow soldier for his composure and his stillness. His Mr. and Mrs. had him out for all to see. Not that we weren't used to being put on display. That was a rather big part of our job. But never had any of us, so I'd thought, been brought to an event like this. I imagined he was as gleeful and giddy about the whole thing as I was. But from where I watched, you'd never be able to tell. The sign of a strong soldier, indeed. Suddenly, A loud clinking sound echoed through the room. With a tap, tap, tap of his glass, Mr. Duncan had silenced the bustling crowd. "Good evening, everyone. I'm so delighted you're all here," he bellowed. "I'm pleased to welcome you to our 3rd annual Elf Off the Shelf ceremony, where we, dedicated and loving parents, get to liberate ourselves from this torturous and time-consuming holiday tradition now that our children have outgrown their childish beliefs in the magic of Christmas." A loud cheer erupted across the room, but I didn't understand what they were cheering about. Liberate themselves? What holiday tradition tonight? We have 2 families who will be liberated: the Halberries and the Mitchells. Please give these lovely couples a congratulatory round of applause for their long years of shelving their elves. Another roar rose across the room, and it was then that I realized why Mrs. Mitchell had brought me here. Suddenly, I felt heavy, heavier than I felt on the days when Mrs. Mitchell unboxed me, having grown stiff after months of storage. Heavier than Mr. Mitchell when he accidentally sat on me. I dropped down below the zipper of the purse, letting the darkness and the realization consume me. They've come to liberate themselves from me. But what did that mean? I heard Mr. Duncan start talking again, so I lifted my head up out of the zipper. "Would either of you like to go first?" Mr. Duncan stared toward Sarah Halberry on the other side of the room, and just as he was about to look in my direction, Sarah cried out, "I would!" Her hand was raised and flailing. Her enthusiasm stung, and I hoped Mrs. Mitchell would not be so thrilled to part from me. Surely she wouldn't be, right? I snuck a peek at her face, but it was unreadable. Her eyes were glued on Sarah, who clutched my twin, Polly, between her fingers. Still, he did not flinch. What are they going to do with him? Chuckling at her enthusiasm, Mr. Duncan said, "Well, come on up here, darling. Bring old Polly with you for everyone to see." With Sarah now at Mr. Duncan's side, he began, "Well, Sarah, I can tell you're excited to get on with it, but we've got a few things to get through before we say goodbye to little Polly. Tell us, you dedicated how many years to this little guy? 17 years? Now, Sarah was holding Polly displayed on the palm of her hand, oscillating her arm from left to right to show the whole room his face. Whoa, 17 years? You must have started right when these little guys came out, huh? Sarah nodded proudly, but her eyes seemed to say something darker, nearly bulging out of her head. I sure did. Well, that's just fantastic. Really, really fantastic. So, let's see here. Huh? Can you tell me one of your favorite memories with Polly? Mr. Duncan asked. My favorite memory. Sarah stopped turning and pulled Polly closer to herself. inspecting him. I noticed her face soften as her memory scanned the past, and I couldn't help think about my own favorite memory with the Mitchells, remembering the time she moved me into the fridge. It had been a cold night in there, but when Oliver found me in the morning, clutching an empty pickle jar, his childish giggles warmed me right up. And when he and Schuyler told Mrs. Mitchell that I'd climbed into the fridge and ate all the pickles, Mrs. Mitchell pretended she knew nothing about it. That was the moment I fell in love with the Mitchell family. And that was why I was having such a hard time understanding why the Mitchells were planning to get rid of me. We were part of their families. Didn't they see that? I guess it would have to be the time I wrapped one of his legs with tissue paper and wrote a little sign next to him that said, "In recovery. I'll be healed in 3 days." Ugh, it was such a relief not to have to move him for half a week. The room exploded with more applause and cheering. I'd remembered when Mrs. Mitchell had done something similar, setting me up on a small towel underneath a houseplant. Her note had said that I was on a vacation and that I'd be back the next day. I'd appreciated the break. Having to hold still in all sorts of poses around the house is not exactly easy. But I'd thought she was doing it to relieve me, a kind reward for all my hard work. Very creative, Sarah. And those of us who are still shelving our elves certainly have a lot to learn from your innovative ideas, don't we? Now, care to indulge us in your worst memory with Polly? We like to end on a bad note, as it tends to make the final goodbye a little easier. Mr. Duncan chuckled. Something about the way he said "final goodbye" made me uncomfortable, and Mrs. Halberry's sinister smile only made me feel worse. The worst memory with Polly? I watched as she squeezed Polly in her hands, and it felt as if I were the one between her tense grip. Now that's easy. The pause in her words held the room nearly silent, save for the crackling of the fire. It was not like the magical silence of stockings waiting to be filled by Santa on Christmas Eve. Rather, it was full of darkness. I couldn't take my eyes off of Mrs. Halberry and poor Polly, so helpless in her hands. And then he wasn't in her hands anymore. I'd barely heard Mrs. Halberry say, "All of it," before I saw Polly soaring in midair towards the fireplace, his smile brightly intact as he was flung into the flames. I watched, speechless, horrified, trembling, as Polly landed amidst the blazing inferno. The fire popped and bloomed as it devoured him, engulfing his hat and body instantly in vicious heat. My eyes begged me to make it stop, but I couldn't look away. I wanted to scream, "No," and to leap out of Mrs. Mitchell's purse and lunge to Polly's rescue. But I was frozen in my terror. Why was nobody doing anything? Why did nobody stop that wretched Mrs. Halberry? How could they let? That's when the sounds of celebration finally registered. They were cheering. They were whooping and hollering. I peeked a glance at Mrs. Mitchell and almost fainted at the sight of her. She was clapping, smiling even. What was this party of horror? Who was this woman I had dedicated my existence to? This was certainly not the Mrs. Mitchell I knew. This was, "Well done," Mr. Duncan guffawed, patting Mrs. Halberry on the shoulder. "Guess you were too eager to wait for the formalities, huh, Sarah? Feels good, doesn't it?" She was jumping up and down and clapping next to him, a smile as grand as a child's on Christmas morning. Monster. She was a monster. All right, dear. The whole party thanks you for your contribution and your entertainment. Why don't you go join Paul? And we'll invite the Mitchells up here for their liberation, shall we? If my heart had been working, it wasn't anymore. I dropped back into Mrs. Mitchell's purse, unsure if I had the discipline to conceal my terror. Somewhere inside me, I knew the truth, but I couldn't fight my denial from at least trying. Would the Mitchells really kill me? Mrs. Mitchell's hand found me and pulled me from my dark haven. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. Not like how it does on Christmas to assists Santa's impossible task, but like the sensation of fear, where every minute movement and sensation feels important because you're unsure if it will be your last. I had hoped all of it would be revealed as a dream, but as I rose out from the zipper, I saw the same malevolent faces, all of them staring hungrily in my direction. I'd had no context for such evils, had not even fathomed such perversities could exist around Christmas. And yet, there I was, the target of a ruthless and angry mob of parents. Mrs. Mitchell was quicker and peppier than I'd expected her to be, scurrying towards the front of the fireplace, eager for her turn at murderous betrayal. I did the only thing I knew how to do, the only thing I'd been trained to do. I remained still, sitting poised and cheerful in her hands as she showed me off to the pack of wolves like a sliced Christmas ham. "This is Skipper. We got him when our oldest was 2.5, so he's been a tradition in our home for nearly 14 years. I was so relieved when Skylar told me she no longer cared for the stupid thing." Gasp. What an awful thing to say. Carla told me about this little ceremony she conjured up a few years ago, and since then, I just couldn't wait for my day to come. A murmur was rising in the crowd when Mr. Mitchell made his way to Mrs. Mitchell's side. He wrapped his arm around her waist and said, "Oh, come on, dear. You're not even a little sad about it. It's the end of an era." People snickered, and Mr. Mitchell's smile grew wide. I recognized his joking tone, but now it felt like pure mockery. It made me wish I'd never forgiven him for leaving me in the bathroom that day. Mrs. Mitchell tilted her head in consideration and placed a hand on Mr. Mitchell's face. "Aw, honey, there's a lot about the kids being little that I'll miss. But this isn't one of them. Maybe if you'd been more helpful." She pinched his cheek, and they both giggled like mischievous beasts plotting their most vile acts. "I helped," Mr. Mitchell defended. This time, it was mostly just the men in the room who laughed. "You moved him twice in 14 years. They were great hiding places?" Mrs. Mitchell scoffed. "The toilet is not what I consider a great place, Sam." "Okay, that time didn't count. I brought him to the bathroom with me and forgot about him. More to my point, you weren't helpful?" Mrs. Mitchell pecked Mr. Mitchell on the lips. "It's okay. I still love you. But you'll forgive me for being a little excited to not have to do this anymore." Mr. Duncan slung an arm around Mrs. Mitchell's shoulder. "All right, you two. I can see you're just as eager as Sarah was, so should we get on with it then? We know Skipper's name, and I'm assuming your worst memory with him was this, toilet incident. Is that right, Sam? Are there any good memories with Skipper you care to share before your final goodbye?" Lifeless in her hands, I willed her to remember all our good times together. They had to have been real to her. They had to have meant something, the way I know they meant something, not just to me, but to Skylar and Oliver. Remember their little faces, lit up each morning at the surprise of my new location. Remember how happy they were when Thanksgiving ended because they knew I would arrive soon. I'd brought joy to them for 14 years. How was it possible that they could throw me away? Well, there was one thing. Mrs. Mitchell's voice trailed off. I felt her grip loosen slightly, and a sparkle of hope twinkled in my soft, fluff-filled belly as she turned me in her hands to face her. Lifting me up to her eye level, she stared directly into mine, and I saw 1,000 memories swirling around her glistening green eyes. I'd always thought they looked like the most beautiful holiday wreaths in the world. I'd admired them so many times, but this time I begged her to return the favor. Which moment was she remembering now? The time I mowed the lawn? Or the time I built a gingerbread house and ate part of the roof? Whatever point in our past it was, I wondered if it would be enough to change her mind about all of this. Oh, never mind. All of it was just silly, and I'm so relieved to be done with it. Yeah! The crowd cheered, and my heart sank lower than the thermostat at the North Pole. She was really going to go through with it. What was I going to do? I heard Mr. Duncan spouting off more jokes, and I knew I was losing time. If I didn't do anything soon, I was about to be tossed into the fireplace alongside my now molten friend, Polly. Polly? Had he even an inkling of what his fate had in store for him? Had he loved and trusted the Halberries as I had loved and trusted the Mitchells? I had not known him well, but I'd like to believe that if he'd had any idea about what they were going to do to him, he would have done something to stop it, even if it meant breaking the number one rule. I was still gazing into Mrs. Mitchell's eyes when I saw her lips beginning to form the words, "Goodbye." It was then that I decided I wouldn't let this happen. It was then that I broke my stillness. I leaned forward and slapped her across the face. "How dare you?" I huffed, and the sound of my own voice shocked me, for it had been many years since I heard it. I thought we were family, but families don't burn other members of their family. With my voice being so high-pitched and quiet, it took a moment for everyone to realize what was happening. But once they saw Mrs. Mitchell's face, frozen in an expression of horror, the room fell deathly silent. "Skipper?" Mrs. Mitchell breathed, but by then, I was already out of her hands. I jumped up onto the fireplace mantel and raced across it. I grabbed a hold of some tinsel garland and flew myself across the room towards the Christmas tree, grateful that this one still had its star-shaped tree topper. I remembered long, long ago when Santa had warned us that if we'd ever had an emergency, it was the tree toppers that could quickly transport us to safety. The fear that they might catch me fueled my speed, and quickly I climbed through the branches, the ornaments, and the string of lights all the way up to the top, feeling every single malicious eye searing through my back. Once I finally reached the top, I was breathless. I turned to face the room of malevolent demons and realized my fear had been unwarranted. None of them had moved an inch since I'd sprang into action. Every single one of them was frozen, mouth agape, and staring. As petrified as I had been, watching from within Mrs. Mitchell's purse. I even saw Sarah peek towards Polly's ashen remains in the fireplace. I scanned the faces of them all, and when I landed on the Mrs. Mitchell, I narrowed my eyes. "You owe Schuyler and Oliver a jar of pickles," I said. Then I placed my hand on the glistening star atop the Duncan's Christmas tree, and like a sudden stroke of magic, it was I who was finally liberated. Stargazy Pie. With rumblings of war rolling along the coastline, the knock startled Cecil. His grip tightened on the pewter plates as a sense of foreboding took hold. Opening the door revealed a handsome stranger with refined features as if carved from marble. He had jet black hair and eyes that glinted like cold steel. "Good evening and Happy Christmas," said the stranger in a rich baritone. "My apologies for the intrusion, but it seems my carriage has lost a wheel just up the road. Might I trouble you for some shelter from the cold while my man fetches assistance?" Cecil hesitated. He had been expecting his brother-in-law. He was struck dumb. Before he could collect his wits, his wife appeared behind him. "Marry a sec?" she asked. Seeing the stranger standing in the door, she apologized. "Sorry, I thought you were me brother. His carriage through a wheel," Cecil said. "Of course, please come in," Sharon said, nudging her husband aside and opening the door wider. The stranger rubbed down his arms as if to shift rain from his finely tailored long coat. Though wary, Cecil relented under his wife's insistence. As the stranger stepped inside, removing his leather gloves, Cecil couldn't shake the feeling of darkness lurking beneath the polished, genteel surface. He led the man toward the sitting room as Sharon fetched some tea, hoping his instinct was wrong. The man shrugged off his jacket, folded it neatly, and put his Homburg on top. "I'm Cecil, by the way," he added politely. "And you are?" "Moloch. Abraham Moloch," said the stranger with a thin smile as he took a seat by the fire. "A pleasure to make your acquaintance." "What brings you to this part of the coast?" Cecil asked. Sharon returned with a tea tray, casting a reproachful look at Cecil for not taking the stranger's bag or hanging his hat. "Please make yourself comfortable, Mr. Moloch," she said warmly, handing him a cup. Just then, their 2 children peeked into the room, eyes widening at the unfamiliar guest. They had heard rumors of German soldiers landing along the coast and were wary. "The tall one is Felix. The runt is Jasper," Sharon said. She busied herself pouring tea, checking his sack coat. Mr. Moloch's face soured. "I seem to be out of cinder toffees. Bad luck? Perhaps next time." He then opened his bag and pulled out a few colorful Christmas crackers. The children's caution vanished at the sight. "For your little ones," Mr. Moloch said, with a genteel nod, handing the crackers to Sharon. She gave them to the delighted children. The stranger made a show of patting his pockets. "My apologies. I seem to have left my coin purse on my carriage." He turned to Cecil. "Please, take this as a token for your hospitality," he said, offering a large golden ring set with a glittering red gemstone. Cecil politely declined. "That won't be necessary, really. We're happy to help," Mr. Moloch insisted. But Cecil refused once more. Finally, Mr. Moloch returned the ring to his pocket, a flicker of irritation passing over his features before the charming smile reappeared. In her lilting accent, Sharon offered to share their dinner. "There's plenty of Stargazy Pie and stewed greens to go around. 'Tis no trouble," Mr. Moloch accepted graciously. "You are too kind. I apologize for the inconvenience. I'm on my way to London to view a portrait. Please let me contribute. It's not a bother." Moloch's voice rumbled like distant artillery. Cecil imagined the windows rattling. "Oh, nonsense. Travelers are welcome. It wouldn't be Christian of us to turf you out," Sharon said, then turned sharply to the children. "And don't you dare be popping them crackers till supper," she instructed Cecil, to fetch an extra place setting and yelled to the kitchen for one of the children to bring the stool, so Mr. Moloch had a place to sit. Leaving to finish the cooking preparations, she tossed a meaningful glance at her husband. With Sharon gone, Mr. Moloch again offered Cecil the ring. "Please, I must insist. Consider it thanks for your hospitality." This time, with no one else present, Cecil accepted it, sliding the ring onto his finger. The red gem glinted in the firelight. Mr. Moloch smiled, leaning back with a smirk. Cecil studied the ring on his hand. It looked expensive. How would he explain this extravagant gift to Sharon? She had refused it just minutes ago. Perhaps he could trade it in the village without her ever knowing. He quickly took it off and put it in his pocket. The family sat down to dinner, with the older boy pushing the stool into Jasper's spot. The smell of fresh bread and fish followed Sharon. Jasper's knees poked up too high, so he stretched his legs out to the sides. "Don't be rockin', Jasp. We've got company." Sharon put her hand on Japer's leg to hold him still. Jasper moved the wiggles up to his shoulders in defiance. "We've got plenty of food. I'm afraid we've mashed together our holidays on account of me brother comin' home from the war. He should be along any time now." Cecil whistled. "Don't mind my wife. She's Cornish and a wee bit potty." Sharon playfully smacked Cecil's shoulder. "You familiar with the story of Tom Bawcock? It's Mariusec's favorite holiday, so we didn't want him to miss out. Would you like me to recount the tale?" Cecil feigned disinterest, having heard it many times before. "It's just a fish tale. I'd love to hear it." Mr. Moloch's eyes opened wide. "Dinner and a show? You are too kind," clearing her throat. Sharon launched into song. "A merry place, you may believe, was Mousehole, 'pon Tom Bawcock's eve. To be there, then, who wouldn't wish to sup o' 7 sorts o' fish?" Cecil interjected. "Could you at least sing in plain English, dear?" "I was," Sharon replied indignantly, then laughed at her flustered husband. The children joined in teasing Cecil as she continued. "When Murgy broth had cleared the path, comed lances for a fry. And then us had a bit of scab and Stargazy Pie." Mr. Moloch applauded enthusiastically, rising to his feet. "Marvelous. You have a true gift, my dear. Thank you for sharing such a delightful folk tale." Sharon beamed, giving a slight curtsy before urging everyone to tuck into the feast before them. The children reached for the Christmas crackers. Mr. Moloch raised a hand. "Please, allow me to share a tradition from my home. Are you familiar with Snapdragon?" Cecil perked up, recalling playing it as a boy, burning his mouth in the process. He nodded with a grin. From his bag, Mr. Moloch produced a tin of dried fruits and almonds and a bottle of brandy. Using the lid of the tin as a dish, he tapped out a few pieces of fruit and doused them with the brandy. He lit the fruit with a match. They ignited in blue fire. Plucking a piece of dried apple up, he popped it into his mouth. then blew out a small blue flame. The children watched, enthralled. When Felix reached out, Mr. Moloch pulled the tin away. There is a rule to this game, a way to show what you are most thankful for. He turned to Cecil meaningfully. In this dance, with fear and shadow, reveal the ember burning deepest within. Speak not of fleeting joy, but lay bare the pulsating rhythm that makes you feel alive. For in the flicker of this flame, you offer the essence binding you to existence, the marrow of your being. Choose wisely, for what you express in this dance may echo beyond the crackling fire. Cecil tensed, unsettled by the speech. He started to object, but Sharon and the children insisted on playing. Reluctantly, Cecil nodded, hoping it was merely an odd tradition and nothing more. Jasper went first, popping a flaming fig into his mouth and blowing out a wisp of blue flame. "My fossil collection," he declared proudly. Felix blew a slightly larger plume. "My brother, Jasper!" Jasper took a moment to decide if that was an insult, and chose to accept it as so. With a broad, crooked smile, Sharon selected a piece of dried plum, popped it in her mouth, and blew a modest burst of blue. "My singing voice, of course." She put her hand to her mouth. "Blooming hot." Cecil blew a flame and said, "Maintaining our thankful village, with all returned so far from the war." Mr. Moloch inhaled deeply, then exhaled an enormous, writhing blue jet. "Nothing," he uttered in his deep bass. They pulled their Christmas crackers. With a festive popping, a scattering of paper crowns and trinkets spread across the table. But then, Cecil noticed Jasper was gone. On the empty place where Jasper had sat was a letter stating Mariasek had died in the trenches in Le Cateau. Somberly, they had set the extra place for the missing brother, the first casualty of war come to their village. Cecil looked around, confused. Hadn't someone been sitting across from him just a moment ago? He felt bad for his wife. She'd been so upset. It was nice, however, to have a house guest. He also wondered why Felix was using the kitchen stool and not the chair set for his brother-in-law's spirit. But glancing at Mr. Moloch's smiling face, the questions slipped from Cecil's mind. Sharon offered to sing Tom Bawcock's tale in her gravelly voice. Mr. Moloch was eager to hear it. She began, "A merry plaise you may believe was mousel upon Tom Bawcock's eve." Cecil quickly stopped her, feeling something was amiss. Her voice wasn't her best trait. "It's a Cornish tradition about a fisherman during a time of famine who bravely set out in a storm to feed the town where Sharon came up." Mr. Moloch proposed a round of snapdragon, calling it a beloved pagan tradition where you express gratitude. Wary but enticed, Cecil agreed to play, as did an enthusiastic Felix and Sharon. Mr. Moloch turned to Cecil. As the flames dance, whisper the heartbeat of your existence. Share not what you cherish, but the core defining your breath. What in your soul would you sacrifice to the hungry fire? Felix blew a blue jet. My boxing gloves! Sharon smiled proudly at her son's first true passion. She blew her flame. My son, Felix! Felix beamed. Cecil contemplated a moment before blowing his fiery breath. The proud, strong Royal Navy keeping invaders at bay. As the crackers popped, Sharon let out a wail. Felix was gone. Sobbing, she explained her boy was killed in the German shelling of the coast. He was so fond of Unton fossils after Boxen in Whitby. My apologies for her. It's been a trying time, Cecil said. She'd lost her voice from ceaseless weeping over the past fortnight. Mr. Moloch looked pained. My sincerest regrets at your loss. They sat in silence for a few moments, so Sharon could collect herself. Perhaps a round of Snapdragon to lift spirits? Mr. Moloch suggested. My family tradition is to share what we are most thankful for. He turned to Cecil. You know the rules. Speak the fire within, the pulse of your sacrifice. What do you cherish most? Sharon blew a wisp of blue. My lovely home, Cecil contemplated before breathing his flame. My beautiful wife, Mr. Moloch rumbled. Nothing, his jet dwarfing theirs. The crackers popped like artillery fire as Cecil transitioned to sitting with Mr. Moloch in a seaside shack. Cecil drank heavily from the offered brandy, lamenting his wife, his children, his home, his brother. He stared at the letter, telling of his brother-in-law's death. Cecil's memories slipped away like vapor. He regretted not living the life he wanted, blaming the demon drink that stole his wife, kids, and chance to take his place in battle. Mr. Moloch offered dried fruit and a game of Snapdragon to lift his spirits. Sacrifice the spark, keeping your flame alive, fueling your dance in shadows, he instructed. Cecil blew a wisp of blue. My health? Mr. Moloch rumbled. Nothing. Then he offered a Christmas cracker. The pop left a hint of black powder in the air. In a bedroom, Mr. Moloch sat beside Cecil. They played again, Cecil sacrificing his only prized possession, the ring sitting heavy in his pocket. Mr. Moloch blew out a large flame and crunched into his almond, then said, Nothing. Cecil stood to pull the cracker. Mr. Moloch assisted Cecil's palsied hand. A pop and a wisp of smoke. Cecil reached for the flaming fruit, blew out a flame. My home. They pulled the cracker together. Mr. Moloch offered his coat to Cecil, a destitute man on the roadside. He pulled a table and chairs from the back of his broken coach, then invited Cecil to share some Stargazy Pie while his carriage was repaired. Cecil recognized the pie and table. Memories of his wife and children flooded back. He despaired at their loss. The rancid pie at the end of Cecil's ordeal seemed a mockery, stale remnants of a life freely sacrificed to an insatiable demon. Despite this, the food was more than welcome. Each bite revealed years of life, each crumb a precious scene. He ate at his memories as a starved man. Please return all as it was. I refuse to play Snapdragon any longer, he pleaded. Mr. Moloch just smiled. One final cracker. He shook the cracker enticingly. Cecil cried, My life. I'd trade my life for theirs. Finally, Mr. Moloch uttered, holding out the cracker. This time, Cecil got the bigger half. Dreadful luck, Cecil. He set the paper crown atop Cecil's head. Strands of Cecil's hair drifted onto Mr. Moloch's sleeve. Cecil sat numbly as Mr. Moloch brushed off the fallen hair, gingerly placing one in his front vest pocket. You traded your life, family, and youth for a ring. Then, even the ring you returned. When will humans learn to give selflessly? But what of my children's souls? Cecil asked, his voice frail, but insistent. Their bodies, I can find a use. Their souls are their own, replied Moloch, tapping his finger to his lips. You know, I never ask for children, yet I'm often offered them. Perhaps you know why humans so eagerly trade their future. Cecil had a coughing fit. I am not heartless, spiritually, added Moloch. I can offer you one last challenge, a gift if you answer a riddle. But you would not know the gift beforehand. Having nothing left, Cecil accepted the challenge. This one was from a Canaanite whom I knew several lifetimes ago. In every heartbeat and every sigh, I'm the reason you laugh and the tears you cry. From the first cry of newborn breath to the quiet stillness at death's edge. What am I? Moloch adjusted his hat and waved to his coach. I am expected in London to collect a portrait of a young man. It seems its owner has withered away in a locked room. The damn fool. He smiled. Souls aren't typically my business, but that fellow... Please let me think in silence. Moloch shrugged. Life, Cecil said, sure of his answer. Please give me my family, my wife, Jasper. I beg you, I want peace. Please, I have given up everything. Correct, Moloch said. He handed Cecil a draft. If you drink it, none of this would matter. He waved his hands theatrically. Far out at sea, a ship was on fire. The scent of gunpowder and death rolled over the seaside like a fog. Cecil was caught by hope's web. He imagined he'd wake with his family by his side. So he drank without hesitation. The blue liquid smelled of blueberries and spirits. The flavor was a simple, mildly floral sweetness, but empty, like drinking a hole. He was alone, holding an empty bottle. He began a long, quiet walk down a dark road. A carriage passed within a beautiful voice rang out. A merry plays you may believe was mousel pon Tom Bawcock's eve. To be there, then wooden wesh, to sup o sibm sorts o fesh. When Morgie broth had cleared the path, comed lances for a fry, and then us had a bet and Stargazy Pie. Nex cummed for mods, brathusti jods, as mod are oozles, dry, and ling and hock, enough to make a raunen shark to sigh. A H would clunk as elth were drunk, and bumpers bremen why. And when up come Tom Bawcock's, nam we praised unto the sky. Two boys waved from the carriage window at the old man wearing a paper crown. Cecil smiled at them as they passed. On 25th December, an unofficial truce was declared along the Western Front. Peace for a day. Perhaps Moloch was not entirely heartless. Cecil did ask for peace. The gingerbread cookies. The gingerbread cookies. Let's go downstairs and bake some cookies like Mother used to make. The warm smell sits right at home in your nostrils, invading them like wild axe murderers, hacking and slashing their way through endless miles of human bodies that stand in the way of their inhumane, carnal desires. Shh, but that's too dark. It's Christmas, after all. So let's go downstairs and bake some cookies, like Mother used to make. One step, then two. Ooh, isn't this great? You've never baked gingerbread cookies before? Oh no, because you always thought that you would never be able to make them oh so good, like Mother used to. What did she say she made them with? Some kind of special ingredient. What was it? Was it sugar and spice and everything nice? Was it love? That special ingredient that every mother cooks with because you are their extra special little kid? Oh my, this is exciting. Your heart hammers against your rib cage as you set the oven to... Oh, you don't know what to set the oven to. You've never made these before. Probably 300 will be good. You bend down, spin the dial. But what's that? What the heck? There's already a baking tray in there. You take it out, confused. On it, there's a set of perfectly cut gingerbread men. They wear little black tuxedos with white buttons. Their smiles expose endless rows of sharpened white teeth, and their wide green eyes watch you intently with their white pupils. In the center, one of them stares right at you, holding a folded up note in its tiny dough hand. You snatch it from him, not caring about the little man's feelings. To my little boy, my oh my, I can't believe how the years have passed. It seems like just yesterday that whatever secret deity governs this universe, sent me to my untimely punishment beneath the earth's soil. I know, I was always so poetic, right? Now enjoy these cookies. I hope they taste just like how Mommy used to make. Love, Mother, Ding. Apparently, 10 minutes pass while you read that short letter. But to be fair, you don't read it once, do you now? You read it time after time until the words start doing tangos in your head as they spin spiderwebs around one another. Now, after it dings, you're supposed to put the cookies back in and start the baking, Mother said. How hot do you bake them? You asked. Hot, very hot, Mother said. But don't they not like being so hot? Oh, these little guys won't mind at all, Mother said. She slid the tiny men into the 300-degree heat chamber. She smiled. There was really nothing to it. Nothing to it. Well, there's nothing to it, you think, as you slide the baking tray in, and as the minutes tick by, their faces change. No more are the artificial smiles plastered on by a woman who would ruthlessly murder them. Now are the faces of men who know their deaths are coming. Smiles that slowly flatten in the corners as 3 minutes turn to 4, 5 minutes to 6, until the red frosting of their mouths fall clean off, and they can't shout for help, just as you couldn't call the ambulance when you're there. Mother started clutching her heart and breathing heavily, minutes after she slid the baking tray filled with small people into the oven for the final time, yelling for you to get the phone, to get up, to do something, and not just sit there as the people cooked in their torture chamber. And then they come alive. One of them pokes its head up, its blank eyes staring into your heart. It's lifeless, dull, unknowing of the infernal fire around it, like you on that fateful night, not knowing that Mother will soon be gone for good. It looks at you, and then it stands on its 2 stubby legs, stumbling as it gets up. It walks to the edge of the baking tray, carefully navigating around its still dead, unconscious friends as they lie down, their backs against the aluminum's sun-hot surface. It looks its friends in the eyes, and maybe it thinks, I'm sorry that I'm here and you're not. And then steps over the edge, falling down into the oven's fiery, incomprehensible bottom. Clunk. Mother? You asked, your body shaking all over. Why was she on the ground? Why were her eyes closed? She may have been asleep for all you knew. Maybe she was. Maybe. And then they all stand up. They look like an army, all dressed in their uniform suits. One of them peers down and looks at its friend, all dismembered and burned on the oven's floor. It looks more like charcoal than a body. They form a single file line in the middle of the tray, a gingerbread snake, if you will. And one by one, each of them takes turns taking suicidal leaps off the edge. And one by one, you catch their faces as they take their fateful falls. "Stop crying, kid," they all say. "Mother will be okay." Clunk, clunk, clunk. The gingerbread charcoal pile grows and grows until it is a small mountain. In it, you see a face. Mother. And she smiles the gingerbread smile, looking at you. And you can't tell if it is a smile of relief or a smile of scorn. But it doesn't matter. Your mother's smile is the thing you have always wanted the most. And if this was the way you got it, then so be it. But that smile rang hollow, now devoid of any meaning, any life. An eternal reminder that Mother is gone. And who's to blame for that? And yet, you bake those cookies every year, forgetting that you tried the year before because the waves of memory forces their dark underbellies to recede. And every year, you hope that they taste like how Mother used to make. The darkness. Darkness is upon us, Will. Throw me another log for the fire, would you? Father Beacon requested. There is no moon tonight, so we must remain vigilant at all times. On the morrow at daybreak, we shall continue our journey to the safety of Castle Divinity. I questioned not the decision to undertake a journey so late in the day. Father Beacon had successfully trapezed through the forest of Dean on several occasions. However, on each of those times, he had never had to camp in the woods after dark. So, it was surprising to me and our other traveling companion, Lord Benjamin Moore, that Father Beacon would choose to do so on the night of no moon. Now, this is important, Will, so listen carefully. You have first watch, so make sure you feed the flame. Never let it descend to ember state. Is that clear? Yes, Father, I reply. You are aware of the stories of these woods, yes? Indeed I am, Father, I acknowledge. But what exactly should I be aware of? I study Father Beacon as he unfurls a blanket to keep him warm while he sleeps. The stars twinkling above us in the clear night sky equates to a chilly evening. So a blanket tonight is a welcome cover, while the blazing fire lights and warms the small radius of our campsite. The creatures of the night, he replies after a long pause. The abominable. But for as long as you keep that fire burning bright, they will not venture forth from the shadows beyond our glowing pale. Do we have enough wood to burn? I innocently ask. Enough for my sleep, he replies. What after that? Pray that dawn comes before your last log is thrown onto the fire, he chillingly replies. Or none of us will see the light again. Now, take a drink of water from my deer bladder. That should last you through the night. I'll keep it safe beside me. I bid a good night to you, Will. My life is in your hands. Make sure you stay awake. Your youthfulness should manage that. I shall, Father. As God is my witness, I will feed the flame's hunger for food. My pledge trails off into the darkness. As Father Beacon quickly succumbs to the exhaustion of this day's arduous long trek on bloated feet and ankles, balancing his heavy frame. Without encouragement, he quickly drops off into a deep sleep. To persuade the fire to throw out some extra heat, I poke at it with a small tree branch stripped bare of its leaves. There is no God, boy. Lord Moore's unsolicited opinion spits at me. We live through this night, and you will understand that, as I do. So, do not fail your duty. Are you not going to keep me company? I ask, hoping for some stimulus assistance to my lonely task. He declines to answer. I watch as Lord Moore produces a deerskin flask from his bedroll. Then, uncorking it, he takes a long swig, spilling drink down his bushy red beard. Catching my stare, he extends his arm and offers me a taste. Thank you, I graciously decline. But the only spirits I am allowed to consume are in prayer. My attempt at humor has the desired effect on Lord Moore, who chuckles out loud, the innocent wit of a child. How refreshing in such apprehensive surroundings. I am beyond the coming of age, I belligerently declare. 2 years past, I retort. Splendid, he congratulates me. Then, you are no commoner, I perceive. I am the son of a nobleman sent to mission on God's calling. And what of your king's calling, boy? If it is God's will, then I will serve accordingly. The shaking of Lord Moore's head and broad shoulders mocking me belie the inner machinations of what most would label a heretic. However, Lord Moore's reputation as the king's most trusted servant serves to silence any criticism, on risk of retribution. To the king, Ben Moore is an untouchable subject, granted immunity from libel and slander. However, there has been, on several occasions, the king's trust in his friend put to the test, like when Lord Moore killed a monk in a monastery because the inebriated monk had physically accosted the daughter of Lord Moore's friend, the Earl of Lydney. It wasn't the killing of the monk that started tongues wagging. The dissent was primarily due to the shocked reaction caused by the monk being discovered in a small chapel of the monastery, nailed upside down naked to a large crucifix attached to a wall behind the altar, his entrails dangling like a butcher's sausage string, dripped coagulated blood that slowly drained into an overflowing silver chalice used for Sunday communion. When the king was informed of the atrocity, he summoned Lord Moore to his chambers and banished him for 1 single calendar year from Moore's own fiefdom. All rents in that period went directly to the crown. When the year was concluded, Lord Moore's rights and privileges were immediately restored, sparking whispers among the king's court of favoritism and privilege. To further add fuel to the tongue wagging, the king pardoned Moore, then gifted him additional lands to add to his already handsome portfolio. There is only the king's will and the will of the people, Lord Moore gargled between swigs of mead. God, if he exists, is merely a spectator to the fallout of that mess he caused during those 7 days of boredom. If you have no faith, I point out, then does that also extend to the existence of the devil? I ask, in the self-interested attempt to keep his thoughts consciously working and awake. There are only devils in this world, boy. No single devil, but many walking amongst us. If you ever get to see what I have witnessed in my life, you will come to understand that evil is not supernatural. It is not the fallout of imaginary angels. It is solely a result of man's own lust and greed. I defeatedly watch Lord Moore adjust his knapsack as he prepares to rest. However, the night is still long, so I attempt to stir him from his approaching slumber. Are you going to kill another monk at Castle Divinity? I unashamedly ask. Perhaps I'll kill you, boy, if you interfere with my sleep any longer. I push my luck a little further and ask the unmentionable question. What did he do? The monk that you killed, what I killed him for, was not just out of retribution. He had a history of molestations against females and males alike. The final straw was just the last on a list of uncontrollable aberrations. The church protected him and confined him to the monastery's high walls. I made a pledge to a friend, and when Ben Moore pledges something, he delivers. His words trail off into slumbering mutterings of approaching dreams, leaving me alone in the waking world, in charge of the two men's safety. A faint snap of a twig emanating from the darkness grabs my attention. Poking at the fire, I resurrect a tall flame that widens the area of light. Then, without warning, the hairs on my arms stand up on end. I feel something or someone watching me from cloaked areas of the forest. "Who's there?" I call out. I look over to Father Beacon and then to Lord Moore, but they remain undisturbed, as if a spell has been cast upon them, incarcerating them in a form of sleep prison. "Don't be afraid," a female voice whispers from the edge of the light. "I mean you no harm. Quite the opposite," she clarifies. "I bring you an offering of everlasting pleasure." My eyes dart in the general direction of her voice, but it is not until she steps into the light that I can focus on her presence. Walking deliberately toward me, she is naked as the day I was born. Her shape is curvy, and her long hair manages to hide her modesty in the appropriate areas. To be exact, her long, fair hair is empathetically saving me from blushing my own modesty. "Tell me your deepest desire," she demands to know. What doth a young buck like you want more than anything in this life? I want to serve God, I defensively reply. Her echoing laugh sees through my nervousness. After all, I am still of the male species, and she is divine, delectable, and attractively enchanting. Does the boy always answer for the man? I answer for myself, and I answer to God. So naive, she disapprovingly states. Where I come from, we only worship ourselves. Dropping to all fours, she assumes the gait of a four-legged animal, slowly swinging her hips as she approaches me. A stirring within creates a bead of perspiration to form over my brow. My mouth suddenly feels dry, creating a craving for refreshment. But Father Beacon holds the water satchel and is not within easy reach. Not that I can move, because I'm transfixed to my seated position, lost in two dreamlike, dark pools, drawing me deeper into the strange visitor's eyes. I try to muster a call to Lord Moore, but my tongue has somehow been silenced. There's no need to wake him, she said, before resting her chin on my lap. What I am about to do to you requires no audience. Do? I innocently ask, my vocal cords returning to normal operation. What are you going to do? My quivering trepidation seems to excite her, causing her to breathe deeply in through her nose as she rises to her feet, her unusually tall frame towering over me like a giant addressing a dwarf. Innocent child, she hisses. Why, I'm going to devour you. In the blink of one's eye, she transforms into the most hideous of creatures that nature has ever produced. Her hair, now solidifying into some form of sinew tissue, opens into a webbed membrane from behind her back. The ends resemble the tip of a thick, spiky holly leaf. Her face is now unrecognizable, looking more so like the skinless jaws of a forest wolf. Gone are the seductive eyes, replaced with fiery red slits of terror, focused entirely on an area below my right ear. I freeze in fear, unable to move, helpless to react, as her mouth opens wide, revealing pointy, sharp teeth throughout her salivating oral aperture. I say her, but there is no other label other than it to describe this hellish monster about to dine on me, tenderizing my face with each forced exhalation of foul air. I'm about to faint from the overwhelming fright when the creature suddenly jerks up in a howl-like stance as the tip of a long sword blade begins to protrude from its mouth. As reddish-brown liquid drips from its jaw onto my lap, the creature's head is abruptly severed from its shoulders with one swipe of the sword, causing an instant cacophony of screams and howls to cry out from the darkness surrounding me. Looking up, Lord Moore is standing above the decapitated corpse, wiping his blade clean with his cape. What happened? I croakily ask, as he throws a log onto the smoldering embers of the fire. You fell asleep, boy, and the fire almost went out. But how? I was awake? Beacon, I presume. Did he give you any food? Earlier? No, just a drink of water from his pouch. Why? You may have been an unwitting accomplice in the attempt on your life, Moore explains. However, bigger game was the intended kill. You were just the bonus sacrifice. I was the prey. You? Why? Presumably, a revenge kill for my killing one of their brotherhood. Do monks act out murderous deeds? I asked, not thinking clearly. Directly? No. But they are not shy of getting someone else to do their dirty work, when necessary. I suddenly realize that Father Beacon is nowhere to be seen. Innocently believing that he must have panicked and ran when the beast attacked, I try to rally Lord Moore for a rescue mission. We should look for Father Beacon, I loyally suggest, right before a blood-chilling scream rings throughout the forest, shaking me to my core. No need. Lord Moore halts me as he gently restrains my worried reaction. Payment for failure has been taken. All that matters now is that we keep the fire burning strong until daybreak, which shouldn't be too far away. What was your business at Castle Divinity? I probingly ask. By King's order, I was to be Lord Protector for 3 months, as part of a penance for my deadly deed. Father Beacon was the emissary sent to deliver me to the castle. I hope and pray the king had no advance knowledge of what was planned. What if he did? I asked. Then I would have to choose between justice and survival. However, killing a king is not always healthy for one's future. You would kill a king? I would kill anyone that wronged me, Lord Moore bluntly replies, poking the fire for effect. I couldn't wipe the beast's image from my mind. Never have I encountered such a monstrosity. And I am curious, more than ever, for information. What was that creature? I ask. Neither natural nor supernatural, nor a celestial creation or heavenly rejection. These woods are older than time itself. Who knows what lives here? Whomever or whatever they are, light seems to be their enemy, and darkness their domain. Since a boy, I recollect stories of the danger of journeying through here at night. Many from these lands that ignored the peril have disappeared, never to be heard from again. Their disappearances have always been after dusk, so I found the decision to start our journey so late in the day a very curious and somewhat suspicious undertaking. The reason now transparent, I added. Indeed, boy. It seems that a most peculiar but fragile alliance was made to prevent me from reaching my destination. The consequences of that failure already evident. Exhausted from the excitement leaving my senses, I sit huddled with Lord Moore around the fire, trying to make sense of it all, but secure in the faith that the dancing flames will provide extra protection from those in the surrounding darkness that continue to encircle us. As I stare into the hypnotic dance of hot flames jaggedly stabbing at the thin, early morning air. A breaking ray of light in the sky catches my attention. Nervous though I am, I stand up in front of the fire and point toward its direction. "Lord Moore, look!" I exclaim. "Aye, boy." He welcomingly acknowledges my sharp observation. As soon as that light tops the trees, we return to our homes, more the wiser and more the grateful to breathe in the fresh air of a new day. "What about Castle Divinity?" I ask. "It will still be there," he replies, "when I pay a surprise visit next time."